And welcome back to episode number 5 of our hometown podcast. Today, my special guest is Chula Vista Fire Department Chief Harry Muns. Before we get started, I have to do my normal pay the bills shout out. So let's first of all shout out to ServPro Chula Vista. They believe in improving our community through education and expertise. They perform water and fire damage restoration, mold cleanup, and construction. They've served over 10,000 happy clients, and you can find them at servprochulavista.com. They're available 24 hours a day. That's servprochulavista.com. So, again, I have just been so fortunate and blessed to be able to get A-listers from Chula Vista on my show. It's surprising when you have leverage against these people, how quick they are to want to help you. No, that's not true. These both the mayor and the police chief and now Chief Muns have been more than willing and excited to come on board. And I like that because our hometown podcast focuses on Chula Vista Bonita. And our focus is really showing you what a wonderful city Chula Vista is. And within that body of how great Chula Vista is, you really have to take a look at those who serve our citizens. So again, we've already had a great conversation with Mayor Mary. We've had a wonderful conversation with Chief Roxana Kennedy, and we're going to cap it off with the best of the best with our fire chief, Harry Muns. So I've had a lot of conversations, and most of the conversations go well when I talk about the Chula Vista Fire Department. And then there are some conversations where people come up with the craziest stuff, and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes. But I have seen your presentations in front of the city council. You've got a wealth of information. You are cutting edge on some things. You're doing things better than most of fire departments do as well. We'll talk about that as well, like the ambulance transport. But right now, why don't we just kind of open it up and share with our audience where Chula Vista Fire Department ranks as a department, both San Diego County, state of California, and then nationally.
Great question, and thanks for having me on the show. And look forward to taking an opportunity to talk about the Chula Vista Fire Department. As far as ranking, it's an interesting question, but I see where it comes from. Ranking comes in a variety of ways to look at a fire department providing service to the community, and there's no one easy ranking. But of course, I think I'm biased, and I think that our organization is amazing and provides top-notch services, similar to all of our counterparts, in the county itself. But as far as what the Chula Vista Fire Department is actively working on, that I think draws the attention of the community and our peers in public safety, is we're good at what we do, and what I mean by that is, when somebody activates 911, they get service that is second to none. And we're there as quickly as we possibly can be. We're there with amazing equipment, and our personnel are trained to the highest levels, and they are able to change what has taken place, causing that person to call 911. And if you try to put yourself in their shoes, when someone's dialing 911 asking for our assistance, something horrible has gone wrong, and we're there to correct that and change that outcome for them. And our personnel are exceptional at that. And so as far as rankings go, it's tough to compare us to others, but we, just like any organization, have room to grow, and we constantly look at that as opportunities to better ourselves, find ways to become more efficient, more effective, to provide that service.
You talk about room to grow. Some of you may not know, but Chula Vista is also one of the fastest growing cities in the 18 cities of San Diego County. In the 18 cities of San Diego County, there were really only 4 cities that were identified that had any kind of measurable amount of developable property. And topping that list was Chula Vista, because we have a bunch of developable property from the southwest to the east, and we are developing that, which creates great opportunity for people who want to buy a home, but it also creates a challenge for public safety to kind of keep up with that growth. We've been fortunate that we've opened 2 to 3 new fire stations recently in the last 18 months. I know there's at least 2, right?
Well, we've definitely opened some new fire stations. One is what I would classify as being brand new. So that's an additional fire station to our network of fire stations. In 2020, we opened the fire station out in the Millennia development out near Otay Ranch. That was our 10th fire station. Thank you to Measure P and all those amazing tax dollars going towards the city infrastructure and facilities, and a lot of that funding went to the fire department. And that replaced 2 aging fire stations that are well beyond their useful life. And so I think that's where maybe your view of it as
Right.
being 3, it's actually 1 new station to the network and then 2 that were rebuilt.
Radically rebuilt, because the one down on West Chula Vista by the Chula Vista Country Club, just a little bit south of that, where you actually had to reroute traffic because of its position.
Right.
That was once just a small little almost house with a 2-car garage fire station. And what's that, station number 3?
Well, it was station number 3.
Yeah.
And actually the station, that was actually a single family dwelling before. And the station that station actually replaced was actually on East Oneida Street, near the corner of East Oneida and Oleander.
Okay.
Or excuse me, Melrose. And so it's a unique discussion, is that when we were rebuilding those 2 fire stations, thanks to Measure P, it gave us an opportunity as a fire department to assess the location of the fire stations and assess, hey, is that the right place for those fire stations? Here's a opportunity to look at the community, how it's evolved over the years, and keep in mind these fire stations were 60 years old.
Yeah.
So the city was much different 60 years ago, and so we took a look at it. We found where additional development or redevelopment has taken place, where the population has grown, and it's had a significant impact in a change in where the call volume is actually at. So we were able to move these fire stations. That one in particular moved about, nearly a little over half a mile. And Station 5, which is near the South Library, that moved about a quarter of a mile. So we were able to maneuver these fire stations to better locations so that they could get in and out of neighborhoods more quickly, get to what we call a major thoroughfare or larger streets, so that our vehicles can drive faster and safer, so that when we are responding to 911 calls, we can get there quickly.
So we have new development going on. So we have 10 right now, I heard you say.
Yes.
And I know that there's a huge development with Home Fed off of the new Heritage Road, south of Olympic Parkway, which I think is probably going to command its own fire department at some time. It already has its own school.
Yeah.
So what's on the chalkboard right now for that area?
Yeah.
Station number 11, I guess it would be, right?
And it would be. And that development is exactly how you set the table, is that it's triggering a new fire station. We refer to it at this moment as Village 8 West. That's the development that's part of that master plan community. And that would be our 11th fire station. We're actively recruiting for that academy to staff that station. It should open a little less than a year from now.
Wow. Okay.
It's going to open as a temporary facility, and then as time progresses, it'll move towards a permanent facility. But we're taking all the appropriate actions to move the station together, as well as ordering the equipment, and then, as I mentioned, the recruitment effort to hire all the firefighters to open that fire station.
So your feeling is, are we on track? Are we pacing well with development in Chula Vista to make sure that we have the infrastructure for fire safety in place as we grow? Are we on track? Are we ahead of the ball, or are we behind the ball?
So it's actually a tough question to answer, because when we look at all of the factors that go into how we provide our services, obviously additional population has a significant impact on call volume. And in fact, that's the one of the main components that we look at as far as what is the number of calls for service per capita, and that's the number of calls of 911 calls to the fire and EMS side of the house per 1,000 people. And that number is steadily increasing every single year. And we've tracked it, for the past 25 years. And that gives us a good idea of what type of calls we should expect, especially when we add new developments. And then we obviously work with our development services department to understand what type of density goes into these developments. And so I think we've all noticed in society that housing is a critical need. And as that has been identified, Chula Vista's reacted. The master plan communities were a little more spread out with less units for our housing units, and now they're starting to compress. And so with that comes the density, which then allows more population to grow, move into that area, but then causes us to have this difficulty in keeping up with the pace. So as far as the development in the units, I think the city and the fire department have a good plan. What we have a hard time keeping up with is that call per capita continues to increase, and that's societal changes. That's things that are outside of my understanding. I don't know if we would have time to get into that today, but we definitely have to keep assessing our situation, assessing the community, understanding the dynamic needs of the community, and reacting to those and making adjustments.
How long have you been with the Chula Vista Fire Department?
So I'm 27 years.
27 years. Okay.
Yeah.
In 27 years. So what, 95?
It was 1996. Yeah.
Okay. So you've seen firefighting change in certain ways. Technology is one, but even how to address fires would probably be another one. In the recent years, has there been any emerging, I wouldn't say trends, but has there been any new concerns that you didn't have to address 27 years ago in firefighting? Maybe it's homes with maybe it's batteries for homes that have solar. Maybe it's how the homes are built. I know that fire codes are constantly changing. What was relevant 10 years ago is probably changed now as far as sprinkler systems and infrastructures and new build. What's kind of the new thing that's coming into play now that you didn't really know you'd have to deal with 5 or 10 years ago, even 27 years ago? You're looking at this going, wow, I've never had to address a fire this way under these causes because of this new environment. Is there anything like that happening in the fire?
There's several things that come to mind, and you'll have to cut me off if we start going down the rabbit hole. But
Okay.
One thing in particular is you mentioned the building codes and the fire codes and how our homes are constructed, and they're safer. They're flat out safer. Fire sprinklers, they save lives. There's no doubt.
Fire sprinklers save lives.
They absolutely do. But then that brings up another topic from some community members of, well, if our homes and our buildings are built with sprinklers and they're safer, then why do we need the fire department? And so here's some of those changes that impact that. The furniture that we're sitting in front of today is different than it was, like, as you set this 27 years ago when I started in the fire service. And in the fire service, we kind of coined the terminology of legacy fuels, as we call them, or furniture, to modern furniture. And so the way this furniture is constructed, the materials, yes, of course, the coverings are all or most of them are fire resistant in nature. However, there's a lot of these modern fuels, as I'll call it, or furniture, that react much more differently than the legacy fuels of just pure cotton materials and coverings and things that don't have a lot of chemical treatments for the dyes and the coloring and the finishes that we like and appreciate. And so with that, the furniture and materials that we put in our homes are more volatile.
Okay.
And so
because of the chemicals?
Because of the chemicals, and because of it's a cheaper way to put the furniture together, or we wind up buying from one manufacturer versus the next. And if it's coming from, an area that is not regulated,
Asia,
or has not been caught up to, things like Prop 65 and those type of things about, hey, California is being careful about what you can buy and actually ship into your home. But things evolve, and it takes time for that to catch up. And so these things are coming into our homes, and they're actually making it more dangerous in one respect. So the great effects of fire sprinklers, yes, it's gonna contain the fire and keep it as small as possible. Now these newer fuels are off-gassing more dangerous chemicals. It's like almost been described as having a 5-gallon gas can that you're sitting on. Just one chair is an equivalent of a 5-gallon container worth of gasoline. And so, believe it or not, fires aren't typically what kill people. What kills people is the smoke and toxic gases. And the sprinklers don't do anything about that. So I think no matter what we do to make the buildings safer, no matter what we do to put fire sprinklers in place, there's still a significant need for the fire service and firefighters to be able to respond quickly and make it to all parts of the service area. In this case, the city of Chula Vista. so that we're, properly trained, equipped, and able to actually remove people from these, unfortunate environments of experiencing a fire, even though there's fire sprinklers and smoke detectors and everything alerting everybody to, hey, there's a hazard. You need to get out of the house. It doesn't always happen. So
You mentioned response times. How is that working? Has it improved? I know that a few years ago, prior to COVID, I was at a city council meeting, and your numbers were good, but you won them better. So it's been about 2 or 3 years since I've seen that particular presentation.
Yes.
Forgive me, I haven't seen something more recent, but I'm willing to gamble that your response times have improved. Is that true?
Yeah, they absolutely have. And so there's another measure. Measure A definitely had a significant impact on the city of Chula Vista Fire Department and how we provide service. Is boosted our staffing immensely and in a great, has moved the needle significantly. So when we measure ourselves, so as far as kind of going back to rating, we kind of rate ourselves against national standards and expectations with, county, state, and federal regulations. There's 5 major metrics, as we call them. So for firefighting, we've made some great ground, but we haven't met the standard. And our standard is to put a fire engine on the scene of a fire within 7 minutes, 90% of the time. And then another component to putting firefighters on the scene of a fire is to get 14 firefighters on the scene of that same fire in 10 minutes. So these are significant benchmark timeframes. In particular, the 7-minute mark for getting one fire engine there with 4 personnel on it. 6 to 8 minutes is when a fire that starts in a home, once it ignites, becomes so volatile that it does what we call a flashover, where the entire room that it started in, bursts into flames. So that's what we call flashover. That's what we're trying to beat. So we need to get an engine there within 7 minutes. Subsequently, to actually completely put out the fire, make the rescues, and mitigate that incident, we need at least 14 firefighters there within 10 minutes. Otherwise, the fire outpaces our efforts. So that's 2 of the 5 metrics. The next one is for an emergency medical call. And so for similar to that engine with 4 personnel on it, we need to be there within 7 minutes, 90% of the time. And what we're trying to beat there is if somebody is not breathing. So atypical acute medical call is a cardiac arrest. And so we're trying to ensure that we get somebody's heart beating again and or provide them oxygen and ventilation so that we can have the best opportunity for their survival.
And how are you doing so far with those? Let's talk about the first 3.
Yeah.
How are you? Are you at 88%, 85%, 90%?
So on the medical side, we're at 89%.
Okay.
So
I'm going to give you the 1% and say you're right. You're pacing well.
We're right there. We're doing really good. On that first engine on scene of a fire, we're at 83%.
Okay.
So we're doing really good. Getting the 14 firefighters in 10 minutes, we're in the mid 50s. So got some room to grow.
Now these numbers are national standards. They're not national averages, meaning this is the benchmark that firefighters of America say this is where you should be. But honestly, how many fire departments actually ever make that measure?
Right. A lot of them don't, especially on the West Coast. It's when you look at the East Coast and the density that they deal with, they'll have 1 fire station for every 8 blocks. It's so dense. And so, that's where they're coming from. So it's very attainable depending on, where you're at in the country. On the West Coast, we're doing pretty good. We're definitely moving in the right direction. These measures, both measure A and P, and then just the support of the city council and city management to see that there is some need for the fire department to escalate its capabilities.
Beef up. Yeah. You need to beef up.
Closer to those recognized standards. And so we've made some great ground. And then there was 5 metrics. So the last 2 are tied into our ambulance transport. So we can touch on those when we're ready on that topic, because that's a whole topic in itself.
Well, I'm going to actually open that can of worms because I'm not going to name names, but at the launch for our hometown newsprint, I think you may have left by then, and the launch party was kind of slowing down. I was engaged with an attendee about the ambulance service, and I was bragging about you. And this person was not impressed. This person pushed back and said, it's going to fail. It doesn't work. It's not going to. And then he started throwing some stuff out like, well, for example, he said in Vegas, it's failed. It never worked in Vegas. It lost money. And I said, well, I don't think that's the case. For a matter of fact, what I've seen so far, it's actually proved to be very successful and solvent and effective. So was I telling the truth or was I lying?
Yeah, you absolutely were telling the truth.
Okay, good.
And so with our ambulance transport, so we went into service April 9th, 2021. So we've been in service almost, around a year and a half. And so our first year in the books, we definitely hit it out of the park. Our compliance, so the last two factors are factors, but metrics is we need to have an ambulance on scene of a medical call for advanced life support needs within 12 minutes, 90% of the time. And then for a basic life support ambulance on scene for those type of calls, they need to be there in 19 minutes, 20 minutes, 90% of the time. So our complete year worth of data shows for advanced life support, we're at 96% compliant. And for our BLS calls, we're at 98% compliant. And so I guess here's where we can kind of make a comparison. We for 40 years, we contracted services, and don't get me wrong, contracts are effective and can be the right tool or method to accomplish a service. But what we found is that was no longer the case. So in fact, when we made the transition, our contractor was at 88% compliant for ALS calls. So they were actually missing it by 2%. And they were 89% compliant in their BLS calls. So they were missing that one as well. So immediately once we took over service, we were in the mid to high 90s ever since April 9th, 2021. We're still that today. And in fact, we're also providing services to the city of Imperial Beach and the Bonita Fire Protection District.
So the numbers are good.
Numbers are great. Yes.
How are the finances?
Yeah. So the finances, I guess the easy way to
are you solvent?
Yeah. The easy answer is we're solvent. And I guess here's how I'll describe it. So we just closed the books a couple months ago on a fiscal year basis. And so we paid for all of our expenses at the end of June 30 of this year. And we were able to pay $500,000 towards our startup debt, which is right on target of what we were expecting to do. So beyond expenses, we were able to make payments on our startup debt, as well as fund 4 reserve accounts. Now, I'm not saying we funded them completely, but we actually deposited money into reserve accounts because we had funds, built into the system, built into the economics of doing all the startup of this program from the ground up, and the need to have not only operating expenses, but then also cover, these reserve accounts because they're there for a purpose. They're there for, replacement of equipment, buying ambulances, having an operational reserve in case there's some sort of, downturn in the economy. So that's all part of that startup cost and those, the economics of the system. So absolutely solvent, paid all of our bills, and we're actually making really good headway this year as well.
So you're in the black. Unlike your fire engines, which are red. You don't want to be in the red in that case.
Right.
You want to be in the black. So you're in the black. That's good. So yay. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I think it will only get better in time. I know there's a lot of moving parts, billing, because you just don't do this for free.
Right.
There's always other things involved, but it seems like you've figured out 18 months in, you're pacing really well. It was a good decision. I know it took time to get everybody to buy in on this because this has not always been a popular topic. But then again, Chula Vista isn't like any other city. And you're going to hear me say it over and over again. I say it almost every broadcast. There's nothing like Chula Vista anywhere. And I've lived in a lot of cities. And Chula Vista seems to do it right. And once again, thank you for helping me prove my point. Yeah. So that's good because, we want to make sure it's worth it. Great, great that your response times are well above national average. And a lot of people say, well, that's great, but what's it costing us? Now that you've proven the point, well, it's actually, we're in the black. That settles that argument right there. So,
and I'll even add to that is that when we took over assumed services, as I like to describe it, we actually lowered the transport rate by $1,000 per transport from the previous contractor. So not only are we solvent, not only were we beating response times, but we actually lowered the cost that to the citizens by $1,000 per transport. And I think we've all felt the pain of the last year, definitely with the inflation
Yes.
taking its toll. And I also want to say, everything we just talked about being able to pay our bills, and we were solvent and covering expenses, and we haven't raised the rate, and we're also not looking at raising the rate. So we're running things as well as we can. We're running a tight ship. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. We're seeing it, and we're excited about creating more improvements, because my goal is to not touch the rate,
Right.
ever.
Good. I like that.
So that's my goal. And I think we have a great opportunity to try to do that, even in the face of what I think we're all seeing. Inflation is demanding huge increases in rates and costs for services and across the board.
Does the fire department have high and low seasons of activity? Because I know we're going into a season that can present certain fire dangers. And it's always interesting to watch the news and see somebody who's trying to deep fry a turkey and never done it before, and just watch how it becomes a huge fire hazard. So we're going to spend the next few minutes that we have kind of talking about holiday tips. As we go into the holiday season, we've got first Thanksgiving. Of course, then we have the holidays, which often people will buy a fresh Christmas tree early, and then it becomes a matchstick by Christmas.
Yeah, right.
And then let's talk about some of the things that we can do to have a safer and respectful New Year. So let's go ahead and step into Thanksgiving. So
Yeah.
Historically, what have been the big issues? And then what are some best practices that you can advise people?
So starting off with the basics, cooking that turkey is obviously the crux of this holiday. And I think a lot of us think of fire safety issues with, people that, move down that road of, I want to deep fry a turkey. So that's one of them, but I'm not going to go there yet. I'm just going to go with the bread and butter of putting the bird in the oven. So a lot of times we just need to give our ovens a once over, clean them out, make sure that they don't have any, buildup of, however much cooking we do in them.
And this section's been sponsored by Easy Off.
That's right. Is give them once over, clean them, make sure that we don't have any excess grease or buildup in them, because we are, cooking a turkey takes a long time. And so the temperatures start to rise, and then we're adding even more grease with, the turkey cooking. So we definitely want to make sure we go through that oven, make sure it's good to go.
Before even that, though, I think you'd also recommend, not just before the holiday season, but year round, test your fire alarms.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Make sure
Yes.
that the kids haven't taken that battery out for their PlayStation. And newer homes, they're hardwired. Older homes, I've been surprised, and you could probably tell me
Yeah.
stories in a whole episode of people who've taken the batteries out of a fire alarm, and then the inevitable
Yeah.
happens. So check your fire alarms, please. Go ahead and
Absolutely.
continue.
Yeah. So on that note, you should actually test them monthly and replace the batteries at least annually, if not semi-annually. And now right, this new version, it's 10-year battery lives in their sealed units and all that. So here's another one to throw, at the community is you should replace your smoke detectors every 10 years as a whole, not just talking about the batteries. So definitely make sure, as you pointed out, great point, make sure the smoke detectors are in good shape. And I'll now tie in the carbon monoxide alarms as well.
Yeah.
They fit the same bill. You want to test those monthly. You want to make sure that the batteries are good. And so that kind of segues into deep frying that turkey. So definitely dangerous in itself, in that, it's got an open flame burner with propane. That's an outside use type of tool for cooking a turkey. Not only is it safer to do it outside, away from combustible materials inside your home, but then it produces carbon monoxide gas when it's burning. So definitely having that outside is really important. And some key things with that is, when you are handling the pot, the lid, the turkey, the oil, have long sleeve type gloves to protect yourself when you're doing that, so that nothing catches you off guard. And then some common errors is fill it up with water first, and then put the bird in and make sure it doesn't overflow, because that's where the big problems start to kick in, is that hot oil, you put the bird in and it overflows and it's exposed to the flame and it catches on fire, and there's the trouble. So figure out what that volume is, fill it with water, make sure you got some room, then measure the water, and then that's how much oil you need. It's definitely a key point.
And that's a good point, because when I first started deep frying turkey, a couple of things. Water's good, absolutely. Keep in mind, oil expands when it's hot. So in many of these deep fry turkey kits that you can buy at Walmart and other places, they actually have measuring lines. And I know it's really low in the pot, and you're thinking there's no way, that's enough oil. Keep in mind, your bird is big and girthy. So when it goes in there, that oil comes up. So, trust the information, do it with water or oil before it's heated up. Understand that the oil will expand when it's hot. Keep a fire extinguisher close by, just as a precaution. Take your time, but I will tell you, on the upside, the best birds I've had are deep fried birds. But you have to be careful. So, what else about Thanksgiving you want to address?
I think you brought out some great points that round off that part of it. So, just be careful with that fryer. So, and I guess I'll add, the fire extinguisher is a key point, and that putting water on a oil fire is not very effective. So,
and why is that?
It
spreads it.
It spreads it.
It becomes a transportation unit. Water and oil don't mix, so the oil stays on top, and it just spreads the fire. So you need most fire extinguishers will address an oil fire, right?
Yeah,
grease fire.
They're typically like a home style. Fire extinguishers is what we call as a dry chemical, and so it's got that white powder to it, and it definitely does a multitude of things. It helps move the oxygen away by smothering the fire with the powder itself, and it holds up really well to that chemical component of the oil that becomes flammable when it gets hot enough.
Excellent. All right, so Christmas and the holidays, we've got both Christmas, Hanukkah, and other holidays, and many of them use candles, or they'll use heat near a combustible. So let's talk about that.
Candles are the leading cause of fires in this season. This is the holiday season as a whole, and really what that comes from is it's part of the decoration component of no matter what faith you are part of. So the candles they can't be left unattended. And in fact, I would urge the community to consider not having an actual open flame candle and move towards a battery powered candle. But I understand some folks they need the candle. They need that tradition. So with that, don't leave it unattended. Make sure you're staying focused on it, and then keep combustible materials away from those decorations.
And in this time of year too, a big trend is these scented holiday candles. And it goes back to, you light it, you walk away because you want the room to smell like pine or cinnamon or whatever. But you heard what the chief said. Please put it in a place that you can keep an eye on it, and not just put it in a room and walk away to the next room and let it, because I have seen those candles, and the container, the glass often break. And that can move that fire. It can create chaos. So it's nice to have scented candles. They smell good, but it's like anything, like a child. Don't leave it unattended.
That it definitely needs to be monitored.
So, and then of course, Christmas trees.
Christmas trees. It's amazing. If you haven't had an opportunity, the NFPA, National Fire Protection Administration, they have a great video about watering trees or not watering trees, and how quickly they can be consumed by fire. And in fact, it's just off the charts. A well-watered tree, which means you're watering it every single day, because it's amazing how much water they will get through, compared to a non-watered tree. And it's literally within 30 seconds, the entire tree is consumed, and it's ignited every combustible material inside that room in under a minute. So you really don't have time to react. It's that quick. Whereas a water tree, it can go 2, 3, 4 minutes. But the unique thing about that is, just to put in perspective, is that, a wet tree is going to have a hard time getting going. It will absolutely burn. I'm not here to say that a water tree will not burn. That's not the point. But the point is that in combination, that it's a slow burn, it's creating a lot of smoke, and that smoke is going up to your smoke detectors, and it's triggering that alarm. And now you're aware, and you can actually react to it. Whereas if it's not watered, you might have less than 30 seconds to actually just get out of the house, because it's so beyond any capability of a household fire extinguisher to contain that fire.
My father was an electrician, and I grew up in the days where you actually screw those bulbs in. But my dad, I remember, we don't always put away our holiday decorations and lights too well. And I would probably say check the wires too on a lot of these lights, because we put lights on, and a lot of them, they're LEDs. They don't require a lot, but they still run through an electrical cord. Check the cord. Look for anything that is break bend, because plastic over time wears, exposes, and all it takes is a spark.
Yeah.
You may have done everything right, but a spark can also start to ignite that tree. Also, keep it away from children. If you have small children, make sure that tree is secure, because children and big pets can knock over the tree, and that too can be a
Great
hazard.
points.
So these are a lot of things that you just want to keep an eye on, because we want the fire department to be quiet on Christmas Day. During Christmas season, we don't want it a lot of activity unnecessarily. So, and then we have, of course, the end of the year celebration, New Year's.
Yeah. So I guess the thing that really jumps to mind is obviously it's a time to celebrate, but celebrating safely is really the crux. And having a designated driver, if you do, choose to consume alcohol, and really just not being on the road is really an important factor as well. So, just driving in general is becoming more difficult. There's more vehicles on the road every single day. And then you combine that with alcohol, and it may not even be your choice. You may not have had anything to drink if you're on the road, but that doesn't mean that everybody else is not. So obviously, just trying to not be on the streets. If you do choose to navigate the streets over New Year's, don't have a designated driver. I think Uber is probably really busy that day. Lyft, all those ride shares, use them. It's worth it.
Yeah. Well, on that note, even if you had to pay $100 to get home on Uber, it's a lot cheaper than a $12,000 legal fee and court time for a DUI.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense. Now, we're in also still a heightened fire danger. So we also want to make sure people still don't consider using the leftover fireworks from 4th of July.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have to be careful that, we've had some rain. That's nice. But we've also had some nice days, because we're San Diego and Chula Vista, and that dries things out. So
Yeah.
we're still in, what would you consider, what level of fire danger are we in right now?
Yeah. So like on a scale of extreme, drops down to very high, medium, low. We're only one day away after a rain to get back into a high type fire danger. Only if we've had weeks worth of rain are we going to have several days for our area to dry itself out and get back into that high or above type range. So, in fact, we have had some moisture, and this Wednesday we're supposed to be having a pretty good Santa Ana wind, which is winds coming from the east blowing out to the ocean, and what that brings is really dry air along with it, and that just dries all of our fuels out really quickly. We're not like Northern California where we're talking forests; it's more brush and smaller vegetation. It doesn't take much to really dry those fuels out and become ignited. Some significant fires have taken place in November, December, January, and February in San Diego County. So we're always on edge, always prepared for that type of incident to take place. But we definitely need the help of the community to do their part and make good decisions. And you bring up a great point. Fireworks are illegal, and
That's right.
it's that way for a reason in San Diego County.
And then, of course, make sure if you live near open area or you have large areas, is that you want to make sure you cut back for defensible space.
Absolutely.
That slows it down. That buys
Yeah.
you more time to get out there and help fight
Yeah.
it. So what's the requirement for defensible space?
So the rule of thumb is 100 feet from the side of your home exposed to the vegetation. Is 100 feet of really well manicured vegetation that's been removed. And what that is exactly how you described it, Michael, is it gives us an opportunity to actually go to your home and make a choice. Because our firefighters are trained, they don't just drive to the first house and start putting hose on the ground and putting their efforts into trying to stop the fire at that house. Because if the homeowner hasn't done the work to ensure that there's the defensible space, it's a dangerous activity for our folks. So if they look next door and they see that there is 100-foot clearance, then they'll go to that house first because it's actually savable, and it's a safer opportunity for that home to be saved and safer for our firefighters to operate.
Well, yeah, and we we want to keep our firefighters safe. I mean, you're right. You have to take a look and choose the safest option. You're going to do whatever you can to, you know, to extinguish the fire, but your priority is the people.
Yeah,
Get the people out. If
absolutely.
that house burns down because it doesn't have defensible space, you'll work to get the people out, but you're not going
Yeah.
to spend a lot of time on that house. You're going to go to the next house where it's more manageable to save both.
Yeah.
Right. Is that what you were saying?
Absolutely. And you hit it on the nail on the head, is that we're in those environments, we're working with law enforcement to evacuate, but that's really what we're going to the homes for, is to check, make sure that the occupants have left and evacuated. And then it's that process of assessing the house. Is it a savable piece of property? And if it's not, if the work hasn't been done ahead of time, then that's when we move to the next home.
Right. Good. So anything else you want to cover before we close this out? Did I miss anything?
Gosh, I have so many things, but
We still got a few minutes. So
I think we've covered
dealer's choice.
So many.
You became chief. Let's talk about you just for a few minutes here. You became chief after Jim Gehring.
Right.
James Gehring, 3 years ago?
It's 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. So yeah, it's been a lot of great challenges, definitely challenges. And I think as I look at my notes, some things I'd love to share is we need firefighters. So
they're hiring.
We're hiring. And I know that it's common perception that when the fire department is hiring, there's 1,000 people lining up to take the test and come join the fire department. And what's happening is that number is no longer 1,000. It's diminished greatly. And in fact, there still might be 1,000 people interested, but it's whether they have the qualifications to actually meet the minimum qualifications to join our, the Chula Vista Fire Department or any other fire department. And in particular, with, maybe it's that in combination with COVID definitely had a distinct impact on the job market as far as who's out there willing to work and the type of work that they're looking for. Because in public safety, telecommuting is not an option. So obviously we're staffing fire stations. We're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it takes a unique individual, especially these days. Things have changed. I think a lot of the society has had that taste of, hey, I can do a lot of work from home or remotely, but in public safety, you cannot. And that's because 911 is a 24/7 operation, and we're there for the community. So I know that there's individuals out there that are still of that servanthood mindset, and that's who we're looking for. But we also need to help you understand, what does it take to be qualified to work for the fire department? And it starts with our biggest hurdles are, getting an EMT license, emergency medical technician, and then getting experience as an EMT, working on an ambulance, working in a 911 system, and understanding how to properly treat and care for the sick and injured, and then moving on to becoming a paramedic. And so that paramedic card, as we commonly call it, is kind of the rarity right now, where there's such a huge need for paramedics, both to work in the fire service on a fire engine, but also in the fire service on an ambulance. And so we're definitely looking to find ways to connect people with a great career opportunity. Even though there's a lot of hours involved, but the sense and the sense of servanthood and the honor to provide this type of service and help somebody in their time of need, you can't replace it. It's just an amazing job, and I would have never traded it for anything.
What I really love about our fire department is I'll be driving down the road, and I mentioned this last week with the chief, but you all know what this means, right? If you don't, this means love. This means like I love you, and it's respect. And I often will do this for both police and fire, and it's great to get the wave back or the smile, because we don't thank our public safety people enough. And in times where it's been questionable, we really need to reaffirm these people who actually put their life, both police and fire, who put their life on the line, who get between you and danger and risk their lives to keep you safe. We really need to consistently show appreciation, whether it's just smiling. You see them in the grocery. These guys eat, so you can if you don't see them on the road, you'll see them at the grocery store because they shop.
Right.
Just say thank you. Same for law enforcement. Remind them that they are an important part of our community, and we have, of course, one of the safest communities because of our police and fire. So that wraps it up for today. I see that Albert Aguilera, who is actually our sponsor, says thank you, Chief, and we also want to say hi. Hello, Sandra. She says, that's my chief. And we have Michael, who says, congratulations on a great interview. You're probably talking more about how great of an interviewee the chief is than me as the interviewer. But these podcasts are sponsored by ServPro Chula Vista. Thank you, Albert. They believe in improving our community, just like the fire department, through education and expertise. They've served over 10,000 clients. They are available 24/7 for fire, water damage, remodeling, reconstruction. And you can find them at servpro.com. That's servprochulavista.com. I also want to say thank you to Pizzo's Pizza. They are always very active in the community. For matter of fact, recently we will be giving an award, I think Above and Beyond award to a firefighter. And Pizzo's always in that award through the Rotary Club donates a $50 gift card. So thank you, Santino, and all the staff at Pizzo's Pizzeria with 2 locations, San Miguel Ranch and Millenia. And then, of course, California Medical Research. If you're interested in finding out what some of the cutting-edge medication is, and you actually want to go to a trial and be part of discovering what that medication can do, look at this issue coming up in our hometown newsprint and contact them for clinical trials. They pay good. And then, of course, Republic Services. I'm not talking trash. They're just really good people. So that's our episode for today, episode number 5 with our guest, Chula Vista Fire Chief Harry Muns. Please take care of yourself and take care of each other. Good day.